Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm still working on getting the hang of this stuff. Thanks for bearing with me. Each new video I make teaches me something new. We are visiting post-World War II United States. Picture America in 1955. The Second World War is over. The Great Depression is a fading memory. The United States stands as the most powerful economic nation on Earth. New homes are appearing almost overnight. New highways stretch across the country. Families are buying televisions, refrigerators, washing machines, and automobiles. For millions of Americans, it feels like the future has finally arrived. Historians often call this period the height of the American dream. But here's the question I want you to think about today. Was the 1950s really a decade of perfect prosperity and harmony? Or were the forces that would transform America in the 1960s already beginning to grow beneath the surface? If you enjoy exploring history through stories and connections to the modern world, consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It helps more students and history enthusiasts discover the channel. Now let's step into post-war America. When millions of veterans returned home after World War II, they faced a major problem. There simply weren't enough houses. Developers responded with a revolutionary solution. Using assembly line methods inspired by modern factories, companies like William Levitt mass-produced homes at an incredible pace. Levitt famously claimed his company could build a house in about 16 minutes during parts of the construction process. Entire communities appeared almost overnight. These new suburban developments offered something many Americans had never possessed before: a private home, a yard, a safe neighborhood, a future. With the help of low-interest loans provided through the GI Bill, many veterans were finally able to purchase homes and begin raising families. For millions of Americans, this wasn't merely housing. This was the American dream becoming reality. Now let's talk about the age of prosperity. The booming economy fueled a wave of consumer spending unlike anything America had ever seen. Families bought televisions, they bought automobiles, they bought washing machines, refrigerators, lawnmowers, and countless other products designed to make life easier. Advertising encouraged Americans to consume more than ever before. Success was something you could buy. A bigger television, a newer car, a nicer house, a better lawn. The idea of keeping up with the Joneses became a defining feature of American culture. What's fascinating is that many Americans had learned the exact opposite lesson during the Great Depression. The 1930s taught people to avoid debt. The 1950s encouraged people to embrace credit. Consumer debt nearly tripled between 1952 and 1964. The economy was booming and confidence was everywhere. Nothing symbolized this confidence more than the baby boom. Between 1946 and 1964, birth rates soared across the United States. At the peak in 1957, more than 4.3 million babies were born in a single year. Why so many babies? Partly because soldiers had returned from war, partly because Americans felt optimistic about the future, and partly because prosperity made large families seem possible. Schools expanded, toy sales exploded, entire industries emerged to serve this growing generation. The baby boomers would eventually become one of the most influential generations in American history. Ironically, they would also become many of the people who challenged the values of the 1950s. But what about the perfect family? Popular television shows presented an image of ideal family life. The father worked, the mother stayed home, the children were respectful. Problems were solved in 30 minutes or less. But reality was more complicated. Many women who had entered the workforce during World War II discovered that society expected them to return to traditional domestic roles. Some embraced those expectations. Others felt confined by them. Questions about women's roles in society were already beginning to emerge. Those questions would become much louder in the years ahead. Now, let's look at the highways. The 1950s didn't just transform homes, they transformed movement itself. President Eisenhower championed the interstate highway system, creating over 41,000 miles of highways linking cities across the nation. The highways accelerated economic growth. They made commuting easier. They encouraged suburban expansion. They helped create modern road trip culture. But they also produced unexpected consequences. As chain restaurants, gas stations, motels, and shopping centers spread across the country, many observers began noticing something strange. America was starting to look the same everywhere. One critic joked that you could drive from New York to Los Angeles without experiencing a significant change in culture. For some Americans, this felt like progress. For others, it felt like conformity. And this is where the story becomes especially interesting. Because while adults celebrated stability, many young people were becoming fascinated by something very different: individuality, freedom, rebellion. The emergence of the teenager as a distinct cultural group was one of the most important developments of the decade. Then came rock and roll. Artists like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Elvis Presley electrified young audiences. Parents often viewed the music with suspicion. Teenagers loved it. Rock and roll wasn't simply music, it was a challenge to conformity. At the same time, the beat movement in literature and art celebrated nonconformity, questioning materialism and conventional social expectations. The seeds of a cultural revolution were already taking root. It's also important to remember that not everyone shared equally in post-war prosperity. Millions of Americans remained in poverty. Many minority communities faced discrimination and exclusion. Urban renewal projects often displaced residents. For African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, and many others, the American dream often seemed incomplete. The struggles for equality and civil rights that would define the 1960s were already beginning during the supposedly calm and comfortable 1950s. When people look back on the 1950s, they often remember the prosperity, the suburbs, the television shows, the automobiles, the baby boom. And all of that was real. But historians know that another story was unfolding at the same time. The questions that would reshape America in the 1960s were already being asked. The music was changing, the culture was changing, young people were changing. The dream was being questioned. The 1950s were not simply the end of one era. They were the beginning of another. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider subscribing. I'm still learning. Thanks for allowing me some space to practice, and I hope it helps you. I'll see you next time.